Heading for 4:15, and in the last couple of days, we've been having conversations about physical abuse and efforts Women and Men Against Child Abuse are making to ensure that if you see a child being physically abused, it'll become mandatory to report it, much as currently happens with sexual crimes. Now, they've also announced in this week that they will be founding a law clinic together with Eversheds to actually deal with some of these issues in a more pressing way. Now, on Tuesday, Luke Lamprecht told us about some of the more horrific cases activists encounter, the bureaucratic red tape which sometimes fails to prevent the deaths of children. And yesterday we spoke about the more defined role the Human Rights Commission should play in ensuring the safety of children. Today we're speaking to Operations Director at Women and Men Against Child Abuse, Vincentia Dlamini, who works on the ground with children who are being physically abused and assists both them and their families. Vincentia, thank you so much for coming into studio this afternoon. Really lovely to have you. So perhaps you can just give us a picture of the clinics you're running, first of all, and what you're seeing on the ground in terms of the patterns around child physical abuse.
All right. We'll speak about, we have the Boksburg Clinic, which services the whole of the East Rand,
yes,
and the Alex Clinic, which services the greater Johannesburg and the North. So you would see in Alex, the dynamics would be that because our clinic is right at the police station.
Yes.
So a lot of the physical abuse cases that come to us are coming via the police station.
Mm.
And some of the parents, when they bring their children to our therapists, they don't want their children to be spoken to. I'll put that in inverted commas.
Yes.
They want their children to have a beating. And this is like the reality because they don't believe in therapy, one. They
Yes.
believe that children have to be beaten. And some actually quote the Bible, you know, their upbringing and how they were. And they just feel that the only thing that's going to sort this behavior out is a beating.
Yes.
And you will find in other areas like your Katlehong, your Tembisa, you find like mainly the townships,
Yes.
you'll find that the cases that we get, mostly it's mainly when parents will stand up to say, my child has been abused by a neighbor,
Yeah.
What is so alarming in all of this is that when children are being abused within the homes, if my husband or my wife or my sister is assaulting my child, nobody speaks up about that. And you'll find that we get teachers that will suspect something.
Yes.
And that's when they will see and probe and say, what happened to your eye? The child, you know, and then they probe, and then that's when we will find out. But most of the abuse that happens within household are kept in secret.
Yes.
And I think you did mention the Human Rights Commission or the type of cases that they get, and the question was, but who takes children cases to the Human Rights Commission? Because Section 28 of our Constitution talks about equality. Children have got, you know, the right to equality.
Yes.
But we are delusional if we think that we are going to have that section there and not have, you know, enforcement measures. That is why we want the Section 110 of the Children's Act to actually, you know, allow for mandatory reporting, because when parents start reporting that the father of the child is abusing the child, it is when they are estranged. So we are not going to be playing your mind games,
Yes.
your parental alienation. Whether you are happy or not happy, we know that children need to be protected, and adults need to protect children. We cannot shy away from that responsibility, because people have actually minimized the effect of physical abuse on children. And I think even the government needs to acknowledge the fact that it is failing our children by not putting a lot of preventative measures and educating parents about these effects, and, you know, giving them support in terms of the alternatives.
Yes. Yes.
You know, to discipline, to say, because the alternatives are there.
Let's talk about that for a moment, if I may just interrupt you there, because I think that you are probably, I have the impression that you're working with cases where families are coming to you. They don't have the intervention skills that you're talking about. They also don't have the luxury of time with their children. Perhaps many of them are leaving early for work in the morning, coming home late at night. They don't have full control over who their children are with, who actually disciplines their children, who interacts with their children, who guides their children. I mean, how do you deal with those families that are reaching out to you, but are under the impression that a beating is the only way they can fix their child's bad behavior?
I think the first thing that these families need to understand that everyone can change. They can unlearn, harmful behaviors for the benefit of their children.
How do you first of all convince them that these are harmful behaviors?
Because we need to show them what it has done, and we need to educate them and give them statistics and give them researches. And when we talk about other issues around domestic violence, there is a link between domestic violence and childhood physical abuse, because we know that children who've been exposed to physical abuse, they are likely to also abuse their partners. And also within our communities, especially in communities like Alex, where there's a high rate of domestic violence, you'll see that children also fall, victims of domestic violence, where the partner who's also being abused is also frustrated and take out their frustration on children. But what we are going to say is that as an organization, whilst the department is not really putting more measures into primary prevention, we have a responsibility to protect our children, also enforce what this Section 28 is saying. Children have got to be protected from harm. They have a right to live in an environment free from harm. They have a right to be treated with dignity. And we are going to be going that route, and we are going to educate the families that are coming to us, like we are doing with other, stakeholders, with how to handle such issues. We also going to educate them, and people just have to understand that there are repercussions for their actions. And because they also need to understand that we cannot gamble with the lives of our children, because some of the children, they end up dead because somebody knew and they didn't do anything. So when are we going to start talking? When we see headlines on newspapers or on the radio that a child has died at the hands of the partner, of the mother's partner, or the hands of the mother, and the mother was quiet, and then we start saying, oh my God, this is horrific. It didn't start on that day. That child has been to hospital. That child has been to school. The neighbor knew about it and nobody did anything. So we need to enforce that section. We need to actually, just make it mandatory that people report knowledge of physical abuse of children, because these children are not going to protect themselves. They're not going to go to the Human Rights Commission. It's difficult as is, because we keep on telling children, when you're abused, there's a helpline number that you need to call. But how many children have got the guts to actually say, my parent is doing this to me? They do not have. So it is going to be our citizen duty, and it is going to be our responsibility to protect our children, and we have to go that route. That's the only way, because we need a society with responsible citizens. We know the damage that physical violence does on the psyche of a child. So we cannot, we've seen a lot of children running away from home because of abuse. And obviously we know the route that they're taking. But if we had prevented it from the beginning, things would have turned out better. So this is the route that we are going.
Yes. But I imagine, there could be some of our listeners out there who've been aware of this kind of thing. Perhaps it's happening in their families. Perhaps it's happening in the neighbor's home. And they feel desperately sorry for those children. And perhaps at times they put in their own interventions. Like when the child comes to play, they take good care of that child. They feed that child. They try to prevent the kind of neglect that goes on in that child's own home. But it's not enough. So how do you convince that passive observer to actually get involved in a process that they see as a risk in a way to themselves? Because of course, but you're becoming involved with the law. You are jeopardizing your relationship with your neighbors. Perhaps you're jeopardizing your relationship with a family member, or even a love relationship, because your partner is abusing your child. What motivation should there be for these people to report such crimes to the police?
The motivation is that we need to save lives of our children. Our children are dying. Our children are dying because we are quiet about it. And sometimes it will start with something as moderate as a slap. which is really not, because it's got also emotional scars attached to it. But I think when one is saying to you as a parent, your behavior is not acceptable, I think you deserve help, and then you are taken to go for anger management or for parental skills, and you do not come, and that to us, it shows that you do not want to change your behavior. But we are saying to those that want alternatives, they can be given alternatives, because you find a lot of time that some parents, their style of parenting is that they raise children who have no repercussions for their behavior. Your 6-year-old is doing something that is undesirable. You leave the behavior, and you only want to start disciplining them when they are teenagers.
Yes.
It doesn't work like that.
Late.
It starts from birth, that the child needs to understand right from wrong. And I think take away some of the things that they like. Just tell them that you are not going to play before you finish your homework. You are not going to be on your phone. You are not going to have that burger that you like so much because you are not doing what you're supposed to do. And give children chores, engage with children. But when you're just going to leave children, because children normalize any behavior that has got no repercussions, because they feel, and also they need to reward good behavior, praise good behavior. There are measures that are there, and I do acknowledge the fact that some parents, the only discipline they know is the physical discipline.
Yes, because that's what they receive from their own parents.
But when experts and professionals are saying, we are here to help, and you don't want to do that, then there is nothing we can do but protect our children. That's what we do. We have to protect our children, because the other thing that's going to happen, for example, tomorrow we're going to Carltonville, the crash case.
Yes.
Those teachers knew what was happening at that school. They filmed the abuse, and they use it for, to extort money. So those are the kind of cases. They've been quiet for years. The abuse that's been happening in Carltonville, it has been happening for years, and people have been quiet. And parents are saying, because we engage with parents in that, they said, I was so worried why my child is so angry. My child is kicking things. My child is saying stuff that I don't understand. But the teachers at the creche knew what was happening, and they kept quiet. So those are the type of things that we are talking about. And I think it's going to be left to all citizens to actually take a stand and say, you know what, we are going to refer you, because most of the time we are about family reunification. Trust me, we are not there to actually, discourage, family reunification. But what we are saying, we are not going to say, we are going to actually be the ones that are going to say, for children, we are willing to compromise. We are not going to compromise the safety of children to make everyone comfortable in their marriage, to make everyone be a good neighbor to their neighbor at the expense of our children. No, they are children. They need to be protected. And if their parents can't protect it, the law is there. And if the law is just there on paper, we are going to make sure that that law is going to be enforced.
Thank you so much for coming in to speak to us, Vincentia. So many thoughts that you've left us with that we need to ponder over, particularly those of us who have actually witnessed this kind of physical abuse and not taken any measures to report it. Thank you.